Okay, let's start. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, considering the time zone differences, and welcome to the sixth session of the IDAZ Innovation Academy webinar series. Thank you all for joining us today. I'll be your moderator. My name is Latifa Lashimi. I'm based at Kriavet in Belgium, and I'm part of the IDAZ Secretariat. This series of webinars of the IDAZ Innovation Academy was launched in the objective to help strengthen innovation stewardship across the global animal health research community by bringing together scientists, vendors, industry representatives, and research managers to exchange their experiences and support the translation of research into impactful and scalable solutions. Over the previous sessions, we explored several important topics, including the role of IDAZ roadmaps in guiding research priorities, the use of discount tools to support innovation and prioritization. We explored the collaboration between academia and the industry in animal health innovation, the perspectives from the animal health industry on external collaboration, and most recently, we had a session on the EU innovation agenda with a focus on health and food and nutrition security and sustainable agriculture. All the previous sessions have been recorded and are available on the IDAZ YouTube channel. For those, of course, who would like to watch or rewatch them, or to revisit, or whether to share with the colleagues. Today we continue this series and this session with a session focusing on funding innovation to advance animal health priorities in Africa and globally. We are very happy to welcome Dr. Armando Heriazon, Senior Program Specialist at the International Development Research Center, known by IDRC, where he leads projects related to alternatives to antimicrobial resistance and One Health. This session will focus or will provide insights into international funding approaches supporting innovation in animal health with a particular attention to Africa and on the global collaboration and sustainable research partnerships. But before we start, just a quick practical points or notes. The presentation of Armando will last approximately 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. So please feel free to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A function or window. The webinar is being recorded and will be shared afterwards through IDAZ YouTube channel. And I should say thank you, Dr. Armando Heriazon, for joining us. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Latifa. I'll start sharing my slides. Please let me know if you can see them.
Yes, okay. Yes, that's great.
Good morning, good afternoon, evening, everybody. Thank you for being part of this session. Today I'm going to talk about funding innovation to advance animal health priorities in Africa and globally. But first, I want to start by telling you who we are. The International Development Research Center is a Canadian corporation that invests in knowledge, innovation, and solutions to improve the lives of people from low and middle income countries. We have 6 branches worldwide. The main office is in Ottawa, and we have 6 program and partnership divisions. The climate resilient food systems is one of our divisions. It has 3 main pillars, and animal health is part of CRFS, and we contribute to all 3 pillars, particularly the middle one, by improving animal health and animal production and welfare. IDRC is part of IDAZ, which is a global strategic alliances for the coordination of research on the major infectious diseases of animals and zoonosis. There are more than 23 countries involved, and there are many partnerships or partner organizations, more than 36 around the world. I will start with saying that there are 2 main components of food production systems. This is important to know because we tend to forget that both are linked with each other, and the 2 components are crops and animals, and it's important to understand that they both contribute to each other or affect each other. There are 1.4 billion people directly depending on animals for their lives, and this dependence is through different programs or that they use, for instance, income, building materials. Food is the most common, but also work power. Now, something important is this formula, genotype plus environment equal phenotype. And we tend to forget this when we design products. So this is an old formula, very well established. Genetics, it's important for the improvement of health and production, but we need to understand that there are some epigenetics effects that affect this expression of genes and the genetics of the animal. There are environmental effects that influences health, nutrition, and production. In fact, nutrition is one environmental effect, but it's extremely important for health and production. And with bad nutrition, there is no health and there is no production. So we need to keep in mind that when we design products. And health is the heart of animal production and welfare. So we know that animal diseases threatens many aspects of people's lives, increase mortality and food loss, reduce productivity, loss in trade and market value. For example, livestock annual losses are estimated to 4.4 billion in sub-Saharan Africa. Threats to animal welfare and public health. So it's important to consider that infectious diseases are a threat for animal welfare and health. Now, this is a conceptualization of the program. This is how many funders design their programs. First, we have strategies, alignments, and as you saw in the third slide, I show the strategy, the 3 pillars from CRFS, our division, and we align these strategies with other funders. We search and establish partnerships, and we also conduct literature review, expert consultation, workshops. These types of meetings help us define gaps and priorities. Then we develop the program, we develop the call for proposals, and we execute and monitor the program throughout its life. For the consultative process, we do workshops, and we invite scientists, experts in the area. These are two examples of expert consultations that we had for developing a program, Innovate AMR, that I will talk a little bit about it. But it's important for us to detect these gaps and priorities, and then design the funding. We also search for priorities in other countries. For instance, this is the Animal Health Strategy for Africa 2019 to 2035, and it aligns very much with other countries around the world. Strengthen animal health policy and institutional frameworks, reduce disease risks, strengthen animal health, and so on. So we take into consideration different strategies around the world. However, we know that there are many farm animal species. Some of them are not as important or don't take that much interest, but they are there. So livestock, poultry are probably the most important. Finfish and shellfish are growing exponentially, but there are others, including amphibians and reptiles. So we need to understand that there are many large animal species that that have health problems, and we can focus on them. We also look at production. For example, in these four figures from FAO statistics, 2023 shows meat, milk, eggs, and aquaculture production. And you can see in general, everything keeps or grows very little. Perhaps chicken is the one that has grown the most worldwide. In Africa, chicken is just above production of pig. And then we have milk production that has increased, particularly in Asia. And we have eggs have very much maintained, except for Asia has increased. And the system that has grown the most is fisheries and aquaculture production around the world. The World Organization for Animal Health has organized and has done extensive studies to identify the most important diseases both in aquaculture and livestock, including poultry. And they have published these infectious diseases that affect animals. There are around 207 diseases that are very important. But unfortunately, animal health receives as little as 0.6% of global health spending, despite mounting disease crisis. Pathogens are multiple. Again, most of these pathogens are found in Africa, but they can be found in other countries. Some of them are zoonotics, such as brucella, tuberculosis, and so on. Some viruses that are important, such as influenza A, and in poultry, and protozoa, helminths, and ectoparasites that also transmit other diseases. For example, ticks transmit diseases such as babesia. So all these pathogens affect animal health, and they are for consideration. And also important, as shown in this figure from a publication from the WUA, is that some diseases affect wildlife, and some diseases that are found in wildlife can affect farm animals, and the other way around. So in this case, for instance, African swine fever is the most reported disease that has affected wildlife. In STAR IDAZ, the scientific committee has organized workshops to develop pathways to provide a structure and focus on where research is most needed and identify bottlenecks. It is important, an important way to visualize complex problem and to provide valuable resource for the research community. And these are public. Another important issue when we talk about infectious diseases is antimicrobial resistance. Again, this is from WUA, and it's important to consider that with the increase of antimicrobial of infectious diseases, there is also an increase on antimicrobial resistance. So when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, the best way to deal with it is through the One Health approach. We know that AMR affects animal health, human health, crop health, and the environmental health. And we also know that climate change threatens the ability of all agricultural systems, particularly on the cases of animal health, by increasing both infections and AMR. Areas of research, there are many areas of research, prophylactic, therapeutics. Perhaps the most important to prevent diseases is vaccines so far, but not all vaccines have work efficiently to protect against diseases. But there are other methods used in animal science, such as genetics, breeding selection. I talk about nutrition, the importance of nutrition for health and production, and biosecurity is important in most areas of farm animals. We have surveillance, and we have other areas that are also important, such as policies and regulations, capacity building, gender equity, and social inclusive and inclusion, and of course, climate change mitigation and adaptation. Again, STAR IDAZ have develop research roadmaps on alternatives to antimicrobials, and this is to help scientists follow a path or steps that will allow them to develop these alternatives, and these include vaccine, phages, and others. In terms of funding and partnership, there are different funders with different priorities, and we need to align with the priorities to create a strong partnership, and there are different modalities and funding partners. So it's not that easy to find a funder that wants to invest in animal health. Some invest in human health, some others in agriculture, and so on. So we need to find the right partner that will allow us to invest in animal health. Animal health in IDRC has had different initiatives. The Livestock Vaccine Innovation Fund, which is closed, it closed in 2023, it had the goal to develop and commercialize vaccines for neglected diseases in Africa. Currently, we have the Innovate Veterinary Solutions for AMR, which is Innovate AMR. The phase 1 was closed in 2023, and we are now in the phase 2, and the goal is to develop alternatives to antimicrobials. Another initiative is Aquadapt, whose goal is to develop natural-based solutions for aquaculture in Southeast Asia. And one more initiative, a Climate Resilient Animal Fund, we call it RECAF, has the goal to develop a climate smart livestock technologies in Africa, and these are geared to reduce carbon footprint. This is our program Innovate AMR 2.0. The list of projects. You can see all the countries where we expect an impact. You can see also the different institutions, universities that work in the projects, and the types of technologies and the species that they are targeting. For example, the first one in Tunisia is working on bacteriocins for poultry, and so on. So we have different projects around the world. In Tanzania and Congo, we have technologies developing phytochemicals in cattle and goats. So we have projects all around the world, and several focus in African problems and technologies. One thing that we always encourage our scientists is to feel the target product profile, the TPP. This is important. In the industry, is used as a marketing tool. It helps visualize how we see the product at the end. What do we want of our product look when it's done, when it's completely finished, and when it goes to the market? And for that, you have the target product profile, which is the, the 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 hopes of that product, and then the minimum is what we are willing to sacrifice, or we are willing to we're comfortable enough to launch the product. So it's important as a visualization tool, um, and it's a live document. It can be modified depending on the results. In Innovate, we have developed research support to mitigate product development, and this is to reduce attrition rate. This is knowing some of the differences there are in academia and industry. We have 6 phases from discovery to regulatory and commercialization, and these phases are meant to mimic industry standards, and we are trying to reduce the failure between each of those phases. So we provide support on quality systems, intellectual property, Nagoya Protocol, gender and social inclusion, regulatory requirements, and commercialization. Just to give you some examples of what we do with these phases and how we funded the LVIF program. We have different species. This is just some of the projects, not all, but you can see how we classify the different technologies. For example, for hemorrhagic septicemia, it was a development of a vaccine that started in discovery. One project that I want to highlight here is CBPP, where the project started in exploratory development. However, there was no challenge model that will allow the project to properly test the proof of concept. So we decided to fund the development of a challenge model to properly test CBPP vaccine. And we have other projects, such as the ones in the bottom, that focus on commercializing vaccines that were already in the market. This is one example of those projects where we support and empower women in the value chain. You can see the picture is showing a lady with her new fridge where she stores vaccines that are used in her village, and this was important to keep the cold chain and have the vaccines ready to be used. So we support private sector engagement and scaling impact, helping, as you can see on your right side, a picture of women with their animals. And the problem here is that we found that most women are the caregivers for the animals. However, they don't have the decision. They can't decide due to the gender biases. So it's the men who decide the treatment, but many times men are not are traveling or are not in the area. So we try to empower these communities so that the caregivers, which are women, could decide the best for their animals, including vaccinations or the treatment for anthelmintic ticks, even other things that help animal health. This is another example. This is from Innovate AMR, which are developing a probiotic special characteristics to reduce antimicrobial resistance. And what we the support that we provided here was on private sector engagement. There is a lot of types of engagement, but one important is to advance the product. They need manufacturers with high quality standards. Not all manufacturers have high quality standards. They also needed to see product distributors, feed companies, for instance, to incorporate their probiotics as feed additives, and small and medium shrimp farmers. Now, not all is about developing technologies. There are other problems, as I have mentioned, that affect AMR. So for that, we have other projects, for instance, foresight and climate change in AMR. And this is to try to find the different futures that will benefit funders and scientists. Projects on private sector, gender and AMR, climate change and AMR, and lastly but not least, the policies on alternatives to antimicrobials and antimicrobial use, which is extremely important. So with that, we have collaborated with WUA. In Africa, we have had workshops on alternatives to antimicrobials in sub-Saharan Africa, and this is to review evidence, innovation pathways, and policy trajectories. We have another project called Reasons to improve access to alternatives to antimicrobials in aquaculture, but also develop policies to control the use of antimicrobials. Opportunities, and in summary, we need to improve animal health, which is crucial to achieving multiple sustainable development goals. We tend to focus on new cutting edge technology, but we need to understand that not one technology can be used for everything. A good example is the RNA technology. It was very successful for COVID-19, and everybody's trying to work on this technology. In the past, about in 2011, I tested the RNA technology for a fish disease, and we couldn't even induce immune response in salmon. This same technology was tested in cattle for another important disease, and again, there was no immune response. So we need to be careful. Not all technologies can be adapted to all diseases. Perhaps all technologies may work or not. It's important to prioritize, and we need to remember that prevention to achieve animal health, welfare, and production is more efficient and is less costly than any treatment. And as you know, funding is scarce, so we need to improve international cooperation and increase international investment to achieve what we need in terms of animal health. And with that, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Armando, for this very insightful presentation. I think your presentation clearly highlighted both the urgent need and the major opportunities to increase investment and innovation in animal health globally, and particularly in Africa. And it was really very valuable to hear how IDRC supports the full innovation pathway, from identifying research priorities by strengthening partnerships to support product development, capacity building, sustainable impact through One Health concept or One Health approaches. And it's really great to see such strong consideration and involvement of women in your program and in your work. This is very good initiatives and nice to see the innovation pathways. So we will now move to the Q&A session. I encourage participants to submit questions through the Q&A function. I don't know. Let me just check if we received some questions here. I don't see questions in this part, but since we don't have yet a direct or live questions, I would like to mention that we received few questions from participants ahead of the webinars, and one of the questions was from Youssef Gaston Sis from Mali, which is present here. And thank you, Youssef, for your attendance. Youssef's question was about vaccinology and future perspectives in this area. Armando, I believe some elements were already touched upon during the presentation regarding vaccine innovation and product development pathways, but perhaps you have or you may wish to add few additional reflections on this.
Thank you for your question. For me, vaccines is a technology, probably the most important technology to prevent diseases. We need to work and try different technologies. As I mentioned, not all technologies work for all vaccines. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to develop vaccines for some diseases. HIV is one of them, for instance. Brucella, we have trouble, and so on. So we need to continue trying. There is not a lot of funding in animal health. IDRC is one of the funders that supports the most in the production of or development of vaccines. But yeah, it's important to continue developing vaccines. However, as I mentioned at the beginning, when we are developing a vaccine and we test it, and in the lab we find that it works, and then we go to the field and we don't get that many that good results or the same results. Part of the problem is we are not considering nutrition. For instance, an animal with low nutrition will not respond the same as an animal that is well nourished. So there are many considerations regarding vaccines. It's not only the development of a vaccine against a disease, but also what else we can do to reduce the burden. Perhaps we need biosecurity to reduce the burden of the pathogens, and we have and then when we administer our vaccines, we'll have more will be more likely to prevent those diseases. So that's what we need to consider more than just the development of a product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Armando. I think it's well clarified and well explained. I see here a question coming from Mariatul Kabatia Abdurazak from Malaysia. Apologize if I mispronounce some names. He say you mentioned about RNA-based vaccines was not suitable for salmon. Do you know whether it works in chickens?
I don't know. In my time with the pharmaceutical companies, we didn't test chickens. We have some idea why it didn't work in salmon. We tested against one disease, which was infections, salmon anemia, and it didn't work for that disease. We even tried a DNA vaccine, two DNA vaccines that also we did not induce protection. So it's an important disease in salmon, and it causes high mortality. But no, I have not tried it in chickens. it might be worth to try. I'm not saying not to use these technologies. I'm just saying to try and see if they work. But many times they they don't induce the effects that we want.
Yeah, very clear. We also received a question from Massimo Scaccia from Italy. He's asking about contagious bovine pleuropneumonia or CBPP. Would you like to just add briefly comment on how disease such as CBPP fit within current research and funding priorities with regards, of course, to IDRC programs?
It is, in fact, an important disease. When we have the LVIF, which was funding vaccines for neglected diseases, that was one disease we target. We have, if I remember correctly, 2 or 3 projects to develop CBPP vaccines. Part of the problem we found is the challenge model. As I mentioned, there is not a reliable challenge model to test the vaccine. So when we apply these vaccines in the field, we don't have the right information. Another issue that we need to consider is, and we try to address through capacity building, is the manufacturing. We need more research on process development, and we need manufacturers that have high quality standards. Mainly, we talk about the GMP, GLP, GCP systems, which are quality assurance system, regulatory systems that basically ensures that the product that goes to the market does and is what it means to do. So that's something that we also find. But yes, CVPP is a very important disease, and we need to continue working on it to develop a more reliable vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Armando. I don't see yet questions coming in live, but I have some questions I can ask you about. So I didn't see countries from any programs within your presentation from North Africa participating in your programs. There are any of the North African countries included in your programs, or there is anything to add, or I've missed slides, something on your slides? It's just to know, just for my curiosity.
We have a project from Tunisia in Innovate AMR. When we launch the calls, so we don't select the countries, we launch the call worldwide, and we select the best calls. We usually hire we hire a scientific committee that evaluates the proposals and then decide, give us information about the proposals, and so it all depends the quality and if whether we receive or not proposals from those countries. So it's important to keep an eye every time we launch a call, so that we have representation from all countries. But we do have one project in Tunisia. With LVIF, we used to have projects with MCI in Morocco. Mostly developing vaccines, but also actually targeting submission and commercialization. So we have a vaccine that was developed by NCI and needed regulatory and commercialization in another country, and that's what we supported.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So a link to or following up to your explanation, I would ask you a question that may be very of interest for the researchers and for the participants of IDRC calls, for example, for projects on alternatives or developing alternatives to antimicrobials. What are the key elements that make a project? Well, it's tricky question, Armando. That make a project successful and ready for the next stage of funding. Yeah.
There are different. First of all, when developing an alternative to antimicrobials, we need to think that we are competing with antimicrobials because we want to substitute antimicrobials to reduce their use. So some of these technologies, the problem is there are no regulatory policies developed, and therefore there is no guidance to develop these these products that are basically being developed blind. There is also sometimes scarce funding for the development of these. Some of these technologies are old, like phages, but there are many things that need to be considered in phages, including the number of phages that are used as a cocktail to treat a disease, and environmental possible environmental effects and so on. But there,
Yes.
the most important part is that we don't have any policy that can guide us to develop these products. And the other thing is the regulations regarding other products such as probiotics. So you can have probiotics as feed additives, and that will be easy just to or easier to launch. However, if you want a medicinal claim, you have to go through all the steps to register um, a drug, for instance. So because it will be used as a drug, so it requires more research and proof that the product actually works.
Yeah. Thanks. I see a question came from Zahrat Kadri Alabi. She's asking how does, or he is, sorry, how does the IDRC align animal health priorities with pandemic preparedness and response, given how most pandemic diseases originated from animals? That's nice and very good question. It's in the
Yeah.
Q&A.
So one of the things that we do is we organize workshops, and it's important when we uh, do the invitations, your participation, because it allows to get information from you, from the scientists. We also try to see what's outside with, say, farmers, what's their needs, in terms of what's affecting their animal. We organize different. We do the literature review, and we organize different meetings to find information. Star IDAZ is a source of those workshops where we can find information and develop roadmaps for the development of a product. So it is important um, to contribute to those workshops. On the other hand, for funders, generally we try to align with other funders and pool resources so that we can fund different projects. We have lots of talks about zoonosis. As I mentioned uh, in the presentation, we are targeting some zoonosis. In fact, the example that I gave on probiotics, almost at the end, is working with shrimp, but it has some of they're working on with Vibrio, and some of those Vibrio do affect humans. We have another project where we fund the development of vaccine against strep suis. And strep suis not only affect pigs but also cause meningitis in humans. So we have targeted zoonosis, and obviously these pathogens are problematic in terms of AMR.
I see. It's a long question from Yusuf, or he gave some insight before asking his question from Yusuf. He said, as part of their research on health sovereignty in the Sahelian rangelands, we have integrated our thesis abstracts into comprehensive One Health framework. Well, I will not read all of this, but they are, of course, framework focusing in bringing cutting-edge biotechnological innovations directly to resource-limited settings through two main pillars: decentralized diagnostics and sustainable control. And briefly, his question is, how does the STAR IDAZ IRC support the clinical validation, standardization, and field deployment of such innovative diagnostic and biocontrol platforms in pastoral areas? Are there specific working groups or funding tracks currently open for regional sub-Saharan initiative tackling AMR and zoonosis? I think part of the question is for me and the other part is for you.
I let you answer the
Armando.
first one,
Yeah,
and
I
then I
think I
contribute
would
the second.
say thank you for this very interesting question, Yusuf. Um, your approach strongly reflects the One Health and the innovation priorities that we discussed today with Dr. Armando, and particularly regarding the diagnostics, AMR mitigation, and strengthening surveillance systems in LMICs. Regarding STAR-IDAS IRC, several working groups and roadmaps already address diagnostics, AMR, zoonosis, and innovation gaps, and collaboration opportunities may, of course, centrally exist for initiatives in sub-Saharan Africa. And this part is for Armando to clarify more.
Yeah, so we work. We are part of the STAR-IDAS committee, and there are a group of scientists that usually organize workshops, very frequent workshops. We also um, accept any ideas. So if there is a gap that we haven't found, like some of these questions, you can always um, send an email. But most of the information you can find it in the Star IDAS website. In terms of sub-Saharan, we have several initiatives trying to tackle AMR and zoonosis. As I mentioned, in Innovate AMR, and it it sometimes the funding depends. Even if it's a priority, sometimes the funding depends on who applies to those calls and who is selected on that. So um, that's something that needs to be considered. But we do organize frequent workshops. We are working on with WUA in Africa um, in different topics, particularly related to AMR. I hope we answered your question.
I think so. I hope Yusuf is satisfied. Um, Please, I encourage you to put your questions and take the opportunity to ask Dr. Armando and learn about IDRC programs. Armando, I can ask you on For example, or beyond applying for grants, how can researchers, this is a direct question, how can researchers and research networks better position themselves to increase funding opportunities and build long-term collaboration with vendors? I think this is.
Thank you. One thing that we support our researchers is on knowledge translation, and it's something that we sometimes forget. We want to publish scientific papers. Perhaps we are measured on how many scientific papers we publish, but we don't translate that information to the general public and to the governments. And it's important to work on those translations, working on policies to change the set of or the mindset of people. It's also important. It's an effort from everybody to have visibility for our governments. We have strategies, and we all want to increase funding for animal health. Perhaps we need to use this knowledge that we have created to also increase the awareness of the problems, and reduce the um, neglected funding for animal health.
Yeah, great. So with the many promising and innovations that are struggle to move beyond the research stage, in your opinion, what are the key factors needed to accelerate animal health innovations towards implementation and market uptake, let's say?
One important thing, and I mentioned, is the TPP, the target product profile, because it allows to visualize um, our product when reaching the market. It allows to see what we want from our project to look when we launch it
Yeah.
to the market, um, and for that we need different steps. A big problem or a big gap between academia and industry is the quality assurance. Quality assurance basically considers um, everything we do to make sure that the experiments we do are within the guidelines of the regulatory. And many times when we transfer a product to the private sector, it doesn't have the requirements for the regulatory. So basically, companies have to test again everything under the good manufacturing practices or good clinical practices. So it's important to consider that when you, for instance, purchase an instrument, there are guidance, and it's more expensive to do that, but e- equipment that are on the regulatory framework has, for instance, in Canada is the Part 21, which allows equipment to be certified for regulatory. So we know that, say, an ELISA, when we do an ELISA and we get results, it is what we get, and not something else. So all these little quality aspects of our research need to be well documented, and that's one aspect that we need to take into consideration. The other thing is we need to maintain focus. We cannot, in the industry, a product is tested. If it doesn't work, it's eliminated. Sometimes it's tested again in different conditions. And that's something that avoids going in circles and circles and circles, that may give us funding, but may not allow us to get a product to the market. So it's important to have define what we want of our product and try to move it through the pipeline, and trying to get um, as much quality on our research to move this project. Another important aspect is that we have noticed is the private sector engagement, and that's to move a project towards commercialization. Some companies may be interested, but we don't have the uh, the right connections to promote it. So private sector engagement allows to get to that. There are some universities that have incubators, and we can take advantage of those incubators to promote our products. Um, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I should say that main of the challenges that you raised, Armando, are specific to innovators from low and middle income countries when when developing products or
It's actually
accessing this.
applies to all the world. We have found
Okay, that's global.
this. I mean, perhaps it's more um, evident in low and middle income countries,
Countries,
but is
yes.
not exclusive.
Yeah, okay. That's very, very clear. Um, we still have very few minutes. I think we were good in managing our time. Thank you so much, Armando, for your excellent presentation and for the very nice discussion. I hope our participants are very happy. Of course, the session is recorded and will be diffused and disseminated through Star IDAZ channels and communication channels. Thank you again, Armando, for your perspectives and shared experience with us. Thank you as well to all participants for joining the session. You may notice that we need to wrap up the meeting, and thanks to all, and thank you, Hannah, which is helping and supporting behind the scene and her screen, and for helping ensuring the session runs smoothly. And I think with that, we will close today's webinars. I don't know, Armando, if you have anything before we just end the meeting. You have any insight to add or anything to say? I didn't ask you. Sorry.
I want to thank everybody, and I also want to encourage, if Staridas or IDRC or WUHA invites you to participate to any workshop, please participate. It is important for us. Sometimes we have had very important discussions where we have only three scientists discussing a topic, and it doesn't give us the right information. So it's important that every time we organize a meeting or a workshop, that you all participate, because that gives us the right information that we can bring up to funding agencies and partners and other institutions uh, to get funding for you, basically. So thanks again for your participation.
Well, very good message and insights. Thank you so much. Then we close today's webinar. Thank you again and hope to see you based on Armando comment, to see you at the next Sarada's Innovation Academy session, and have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye. Bye, Armando. See you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.